Okay, whatever you're doing right now, I know you're saying, what do you mean, Pastor Tony? I'm watching this video. I get it. Okay, but just stop right there and pause for a few seconds. What do you hear right now? Wherever you are, you're likely hearing a whole variety of sounds. Maybe it's kids are still restless trying to go to bed. Mom, Dad, I need to go to the bathroom. I need water. Or maybe it's raining, or the wind is howling, or the dogs are barking, and you hear what's happening outside, cars, other house noises, furnace, air conditioner, dishwasher. Maybe it was so quiet, and you're with a small group right now, and you heard someone's stomach growling, or your own. You see, by asking you to do this exercise, I prompted your brain to take control of the sensory experience and made you listen rather than just hear. The difference between the sense of hearing and the skill of listening is attention. Hearing, in short's easy, but listening, really listening, is hard when potential distractions are leaping into your ears every 50 thousandths of a second, and pathways in your brain are just waiting to be interrupting your focus. See, I believe listening is a skill that we're in danger of losing in a world of digital distraction and social media overload. Conversations with our cell phones constantly in our hands makes this art of listening very, very hard. Hearing is when sound vibrations create a physical response inside the ear. Listening is a process of communication that requires a person to pay attention to the speaker and provide feedback. It extends much further than hearing. Listening requires concentration, not just hearing the sounds, but also reacting to it. And just as hearing is different from listening, transactional listening is also different from relational listening. Do you know that the earliest Jesuit missionaries made it a point to enter new locations and not speak for 6 months? Instead, they listened. These missionaries recognized the importance of understanding where the other people were before attempting anything else. That's intense. It's determined listening. In my first days as a missionary in my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri, I had to do what's known as participant observation. I would go into an ethnic restaurant, in my case, Bosnian, because at that time there were 50,000 Bosnian Muslim refugees that moved into the area of South St. Louis where I grew up. What did I do? I ordered my favorite Turkish coffee, and I sat and I listened to conversation. I picked up the language. I learned their ways of communicating with one another. I observed their verbal and physical cues. I didn't speak other than ordering. It was a great exercise. Listening requires concentration, deriving meaning from the sound that's heard and reacting to it. And just as hearing is different from listening, transactional listening is also different from relational listening. Transactional listening is a one-way communication, like in news broadcast or a speech, one person speaking, like me, while another is hearing and trying to understand without the opportunity to interact. See, in this type of listening, we're seeking information and understanding, and accuracy is paramount to us. But relational listening allows for interaction between the speaker and listener. The person who's listening can ask questions, repeat back what the person has told them to make sure they've heard it correctly. This kind of listening fosters an exchange of feelings between people, not just comprehension of ideas. In this kind of listening, we're seeking connection, and empathy is paramount. As you listen relationally, you can also listen spiritually. Spiritual listening is keeping one ear open to God, the Holy Spirit, and asking Him to supply us with insights into a person's situation while we listen. The goal when listening spiritually is not to solve problems or provide answers, but to understand more deeply with both human and spiritual enabled insight. In Mark chapter 4, Jesus, He's teaching a crowd gathered along the shore. And after He gives them a parable about seeds that were planted in all types of soil, He calls out, "Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear." Jesus was inviting them to hear with spiritual ears, to understand and respond to what God was saying to them. And later he meets alone with his 12 closest followers and he explains more of the parable's meaning. He concludes with a challenge, and I like the way it's articulated in the Message version. He says, are you listening to this? Really listening? Jesus wants his followers to listen well to God. And when we listen carefully to God and his word while listening to others, our lives, they become like fertile soil. And just as in the parable, it's going to result in abundance of fruit. True listening is an expression of love and kindness, not an attempt to get someone to change their behavior or conform immediately to a certain set of beliefs. Listening is a demonstration of respect that communicates value and worth. When we listen with love, we hear the person's story without judgment or fear. Relational listening, at its best, asks, what does this person need? Rather than, how can I fix this person and get them past this? Or how can I change this person or their thinking? Unfortunately, I think Christians in our past recent history have been known for talking at people rather than listening to them when it comes to sharing our faith. People are more likely to grow when they can sort out their difficulties in the presence of someone who's committed to them rather than focused on a particular outcome. Jesus told us to love our neighbor as ourselves. When we listen, we're giving the attention that most of us love to receive. Allowing another person to speak with the goal of understanding their situation and knowing them as a person is more than simply hearing or comprehending. It also reveals God's love to them. In fact, it is being Christ to that other person. Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote this: the first service that one owes to others in the fellowship consists in listening to them. Yet true listening is lacking in our churches, and it's rare in our culture. Listening plays an essential role as we come alongside those seeking God, and in the process transforms us as well. Listening is not just giving a sympathetic ear to someone, it involves empathy too. And what's the difference? This can be better understood by looking at the difference between sympathy and empathy. The prefix sim means with. The prefix em means in. As well-meaning and important as sympathy is, being with someone as they feel pain, empathy actually goes beyond that and enters into the person's feelings and perspective, seeking to understand and care more deeply. Empathy offers comfort, not pat answers, and tries to understand and even experience the other person's feelings. It starts and stays with where the person is and really tries to understand rather than change. Remember that only God can change a human heart. There's an illustration of this dynamic in the story of Job. When Job's tragedies initially crash down on him, his friends come to visit and comfort him. When they arrive, they see firsthand his pain and sit with him in silence for a week. One might think that was a waste of time. But then Eliphaz from Teman can't take it anymore. He says, would you mind if I said something to you? Under the circumstances, it's hard to keep quiet. After Eliphaz gives Job his advice, they all take turns talking, and virtually everything they say through the rest of the book is a mistake. Their speeches are full of poorly applied theology, explanations, and criticism rather than empathy. At the end of the book, God says that Job, even speaking from his pain, was actually more theologically correct than his well-versed friends who tried to justify God. When the friends simply spent time with Job, they actually did the right thing. They came alongside him in his grief and his pain. But when they began to speak, it's clear that they didn't really empathize with Job, and they weren't in tune with God either. They wanted to explain God and his plan and end up blathering useless counsel that brought discouragement and forced Job to defend himself. If we're not willing to listen and truly empathize with someone who's experiencing hardship or pain or emotion, it's likely that we'll be off track and we won't be able to help them discover answers that will really help. Do you imagine a world where followers of Jesus are known for being great listeners and learners with the courage and willingness to engage others? Maybe we're just one listening moment away from a meaningful conversation about God with someone who would never darken the doorway of a church. It's worth listening for, isn't it?